The driver looked straight ahead through the windshield at the empty intersection ahead. The navigation system announced the next turn, and their eyes checked the screen for just a moment. They lifted their gaze back to the road and began to accelerate smoothly through the green light. Less than a second later, they slammed the brakes and swerved, heart pounding against their ribs. A motorcyclist they never saw until the last possible instant had already entered the crossing. The driver was not looking at a phone, not daydreaming, and not under the influence of anything. Their eyes were open and physically aimed at the world directly ahead of them. Yet a whole person on a moving vehicle simply did not seem to exist in their experience. The usual explanation for a near miss is that someone was distracted or careless. But here the puzzle is deeper because the driver was actively trying to pay attention and still missed something obvious. Something else was happening, a well-documented limit of the human mind that operates even when we try our hardest. Psychologists call this phenomenon inattentional blindness, and it reveals a hidden boundary of awareness. Inattentional blindness means failing to notice an unexpected object right in front of your eyes when your attention is busy with something else. It is not a defect of the eyes or a sign of low intelligence. It is a built-in feature of how the brain manages information. Think of attention as a narrow spotlight that can only illuminate one small patch of the world at a time. Everything outside that spotlight gets processed so lightly that it rarely reaches conscious awareness. You can feel this spotlight at work when you are reading a book in a noisy room and suddenly realize you have no idea what someone next to you just said. Your ears received the sound, but your attention was elsewhere, so the words never became a conscious experience. The same principle operates in vision, and it can produce results that are hard to believe until you experience them yourself. About 25 years ago, researchers created a famous demonstration that turned this scientific idea into something unforgettable. They asked volunteers to watch a short video of two teams passing basketballs back and forth. The task was simple. Count how many times the players wearing white shirts pass the ball and ignore the players in black shirts. The volunteers focused intently, tracking the ball and silently adding up the passes. What roughly half of them failed to notice was a person in a full gorilla suit who walked directly through the middle of the game, faced the camera, and beat their chest. When the video ended and they were told about the gorilla, many volunteers refused to believe it was the same video. Their eyes had been pointing at the screen the whole time, and the gorilla was right there in plain sight. But their attention was consumed by the counting task, so the unexpected visitor never made it into their conscious world. This is the hidden limit made visible. When you attend to one thing, you can become functionally blind to everything else, even a gorilla. Now return to the driver at the intersection, whose attention was focused on the navigation prompt and the color of the traffic light. The motorcycle entered the scene unexpectedly, and precisely because it was unexpected, the driver's spotlight did not include it. The driver's eyes pointed in the correct direction, but seeing is not a camera that records everything equally. Seeing is an active construction shaped by attention, and what attention ignores might as well be invisible for the person experiencing that moment. To understand why attention creates such deep blindness, it helps to look at the pressure point where incoming information gets selected. The brain receives far more sensory input every second than it can fully process, so it must filter ruthlessly to avoid overload. Classic example is the cocktail party effect. In a crowded room, you can follow one conversation because your brain is suppressing competing voices. But if someone across the room speaks your name, that suppressed signal can suddenly break through and capture your attention. This shows that unattended information is not completely blocked. Rather, it is processed at a reduced level and monitored for personal significance. Inattentional blindness happens when a stimulus is not personally significant and does not match what the brain is currently searching for. The motorcycle was not a basketball pass or a spoken name. It was an unexpected shape in a location where the driver expected nothing. Another research window into this hidden limit comes from change blindness, a close relative of inattentional blindness. Change blindness is the failure to notice when something in the visual world changes, often in plain view. In one well-known setup, a researcher approached a pedestrian to ask for directions, holding a large map. While they were talking, two people carrying a door walked between them, and behind the cover of the door, the researcher switched places with a different person. The new researcher was a different height, wore different clothes, and had a different voice. Yet roughly half of the pedestrians continued the conversation without realizing they were now talking to a completely different human being. This is not a trick of dim lighting or brief glances. The conversation continued face to face without interruption. The brain was so busy building a stable, coherent story from the social interaction that it did not register the swap of the main character. Both inattentional blindness and change blindness point toward a critical trade-off at the heart of conscious experience. To make sense of the world, the brain must ignore far more than it notices, and it does so based on expectations, goals, and past experience. Expectation is a powerful filter. When you expect to see an empty road, you are far less likely to notice a small, fast-moving object. When you expect to keep speaking to the same person, your brain simply fills in continuity rather than checking every detail. A concept called perceptual load helps explain when blindness is most likely to strike. When your main task is very demanding, your attention fills to capacity, and there is no spare resource left to notice unexpected objects. The driver's task of navigating, checking the light, and monitoring the intersection created a high perceptual load that left no room for the motorcycle. This does not mean that some people are immune. Under high enough load, virtually everyone becomes susceptible to these limits. Small individual differences do exist. People who play certain fast-paced action video games may sometimes be slightly better at detecting unexpected objects. But no one can attend to everything, and the most experienced drivers still experience inattentional blindness in demanding moments. The hidden limit is not a weakness of a scattered mind. It is the cost of a mind that can concentrate at all. Without the ability to filter out the irrelevant, a conscious mind would drown in a sea of meaningless detail. Yet the cost is real, and it surfaces every day outside of psychology laboratories. Radiologists searching for tumors in medical scans can miss unexpected anomalies that are clearly visible because their attention is fixed on the expected pattern. Security screeners checking bags for weapons sometimes fail to see an obvious prohibited item placed there by a supervisor precisely because they are looking for something else. Even eyewitnesses to a crime can miss a weapon being hidden or an accomplice standing nearby while their attention is glued to the main attacker. These are not careless people. They are human minds doing exactly what minds do under pressure. The unsettling truth inattentional blindness reveals is that your feeling of a complete, detailed visual world is something your brain constructs, not a perfect recording. You feel as though you can see everything in front of you. But this feeling is an illusion created by quick eye movements and a brain that fills in gaps from memory and expectation. When the world suddenly breaks that illusion with a near miss on the road, it can feel like the mind has betrayed you. But the very machinery that created the blindness is the same machinery that allows you to read these words right now without being distracted by every sound and shadow in the room. Attention is a choice, and a choice always comes with a price. What you choose to attend to is also what you choose to ignore. The driver at the intersection chose to attend to the navigation prompt and the traffic signal, and in doing so, they necessarily ignored the unexpected. This is the central reversal that changes how the opening moment feels once you understand it. The driver was not failing to see. They were succeeding at focusing, and the blindness was the silent partner of that success. The question that opened this journey was, how could a person look straight at something and not see it? The answer is that looking and seeing are not the same thing. And seeing requires a spotlight that burns so brightly it casts shadows everywhere else. Now the crescendo of this insight arrives, and it lands with a quiet but sharp reversal. What felt like a frightening flaw in the driver's awareness is actually a fixed operating principle of consciousness itself. To have a mind that can hold a thought, follow a route, or love a face, you must have a mind that tunes out the infinite information it cannot process at that moment. The hidden limit of attention is not a bug that can be patched with better training or a stronger will. It is the fundamental architecture that makes a human mind capable of anything beyond a constant, overwhelming blur. The driver's spotlight was working exactly as it must, and the terror of the near miss came from a momentary mismatch between the spotlight and a world that holds more than any spotlight can ever reveal. What changes once you understand this is not that you can suddenly see everything, but that you can stop expecting your mind to be a security camera. You can begin to compensate for the spotlight's shadows by actively looking where you would normally assume you have already seen. A concrete shift happens when you catch yourself trusting the feeling of complete awareness, and instead ask, what am I not looking for right now? After the climax, the emotional charge settles into a quieter, more reflective register. Understanding the hidden limits of attention does not remove the danger, but it can introduce a practical pause before crucial moments. Before pulling into an intersection, a driver who knows about inattentional blindness might intentionally look left and right twice, instead of assuming a quick glance is enough. A medical professional might deliberately scan the whole image before zooming into the expected area of concern. None of these strategies guarantee that you will always catch the unexpected, because no strategy can outrun the processing limits of the brain. But approaching high-stakes situations with humility about your own attention can turn a hidden limit into a conscious safety check. That small pause is the difference between trusting a spotlight you now understand and being oblivious to its beam. And that same pause appears in ordinary life beyond safety-critical moments. When a friend says something you miss because you were composing your reply, you are not a bad listener. You are a mind that can only hold one priority at a time. When you cannot find the keys you are looking at because your attention is on the phone call in your earbuds, you are not losing your memory. You are simply demonstrating that awareness is a resource allocated moment by moment, not a light on the whole room. One final return to the driver now carries a different emotional meaning than it did in the first few seconds of this story. The near miss was terrifying, but it was not a moral failure or a sign of a broken brain. It was evidence of a mind that could focus, caught in a world that is always richer and stranger than any single focus can accommodate. The hidden limit of attention is also what makes attention powerful, and seeing that limit is the first step toward respecting it. A spotlight is not a flaw because it casts shadows. It is a spotlight exactly because it does.